you remember the first time you drove a car? My first driving experience was pretty crazy. Granted, I was in a parking lot, so there wasn't any real possibility of me being in danger. But, I mean, you never know. 9 miles per hour is pretty fast. The first time I drove, I was pretty nervous. I made sure I kept both of my hands on the wheel and my eyes on the road. Though I was able to stay focused in this situation, it's clear to see that the majority of people in today's society struggle to pay attention while they are driving. In recent years, with increases in both the production and usage of handheld technology devices, we've seen a serious epidemic beginning to emerge. Over-reliance on these devices, especially amongst teens, has led to dangerous driving conditions on the roads and a higher death rate amongst younger generations. According to the Zebra, in 2023, this epidemic has resulted in an average 3,500 deaths per year in the US alone. Distracted driving is one of the most prevalent issues of the modern world. Today, we'll be discussing the definition of distracted driving, its history, current laws in the status quo, consequences of driving while distracted, disproportionately impacted groups, a solution to this issue, and finally, we'll discover the benefits we gain from this solution's implementation. Alrighty, folks, grab your keys and let's get that engine going. In order to understand the seriousness of this issue, we must first answer the question, what is distracted driving? According to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, distracted driving is any activity that diverts attention from driving or anything that takes your attention away from the task of safe driving. The most popular example of this practice is using handheld mobile devices. However, inattentive driving can also result from eating or drinking, talking to passengers, and listening to music. Anything that takes your attention away from the road and your surroundings while you're operating a moving vehicle puts you, your passengers, pedestrians, roadside workers, and other drivers in danger. Anyone, even the best drivers, can fall victim to the temptations of being a distracted driver. By now, we pretty much all know that having the ability to drive safely is more of an issue than it is common sense. We know this problem exists, but let's next take a look at the history of distracted driving to better understand how this epidemic evolved. Contrary to popular belief, distracted driving has been around for a really long time. Alexandra Sider from McGrath Family of Dealerships explains that this issue first began in the 1950s when technological devices started appearing in cars. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. The technology that was installed in cars during this time was very different from the cars that we drive today. At this point in time, most cars were advanced enough to have audio systems. Though minor, these technological advancements made it easier for drivers to change between radio stations while driving. Unfortunately, this technology didn't have drivers singing "It's a Party in the USA" by Miley Cyrus, but instead the beep beep, beep beep in the Beatles' famous song "Drive My Car." Even though these systems allowed drivers to listen to their favorite tunes, they acted as just another distraction, posing a real threat to drivers' safety. Advocates of these devices, commonly referred to as advanced driver assistance systems, will cite instances where technology has made it safer and easier for drivers to be on the roads. However, as stated in Volume 65 of Professional Safety, the longer drivers are exposed to these systems, the more distracted they will become on the roads. Shockingly, drivers with advanced driver assistance system installations are 2 times more likely to engage in reckless driving behavior than those who drive cars without these newer technologies. With this technology continuing to advance, it has become increasingly more commonplace in vehicles. As a result of this, distracted driving crashes have started appearing more and more frequently. Thus, some states have begun taking measures and implementing laws to reduce the harms of this issue. According to Edith Braco Sanchez from CNN on March 21st of 2019, in 47 of the 50 United States, as well as the District of Columbia, texting and driving is illegal. This law has been implemented through both primary and secondary means. In a state that enforces this rule as a primary law, drivers can be pulled over for texting while driving alone. In states where texting and driving is banned through a secondary law, another violation must be present before a driver can be pulled over. Using a handheld device while driving alone is not a violation in these states. Now, for those of you who are in the back and are already asking, are we there yet? Let's not go too fast. Obviously, when the laws that are in place are broken, there must be some kind of consequence. The outcome of distracted driving is most commonly shown in two different ways. First, there is an increased rate of car crashes, as well as deaths resulting from these crashes. Eric Taub from the New York Times explains that in 2016, distracted driving led to 3,450 deaths in the United States. As stated by ZenDrive in 2017, Kansas was ranked the 40th most distracted state. It's clear to see that this issue is not only problematic on a national level, but even more so on a global level. Many more crashes take place in countries all around the globe. Not only does distracted driving cost our population in losses of life, but it can secondly lead to various financial issues. Driver's Alert explains that inattentive driving habits can cost us in the forms of medical bills, car damage, property damage, and heightened insurance fees. Though the losses we suffer from distracted driving harm the family of our nation, some groups are disproportionately put at risk to encounter the dangers of distracted driving. The first of these groups are teenagers, young or inexperienced drivers, and millennials. Despina Starvinos from the Society for Research on Child Development explains in Volume 89 of Child Development that these demographics have the highest risk of being involved in a distracted driving crash due to the fact that they are most likely to engage in the use of distracted driving technologies. These groups are likely to use mobile, handheld devices because they use them in their everyday lives and are likely dependent on these technologies. This is especially common amongst teenagers, who are already more inexperienced drivers and likely to partake in reckless driving behavior even without these distractions present. Additionally, road workers, highway workers, and emergency first responders are at a higher risk of being hit by a distracted driver. It's clear to see that anyone on the roads can be hurt from a distracted driver that causes a crash, but workers who spend their days on the roadsides are often overlooked. According to CBS News, 71% of people have admitted to taking pictures or sending messages while driving by an emergency service vehicle, and 16% of all drivers have either hit or almost hit emergency workers on the sides of the road. These statistics show us that not only are select groups more likely to find themselves at risk, but by having these workers do their job, they're putting themselves and others in dangers. It's more than obvious that even a singular distracted driver on the roads puts us all in danger, which is why it's even more vital that we take steps to solve this issue. That is enough of the problem. Don't you make me turn this car around. Instead, we must redirect our attention to answer the question, how can we go about solving this complex issue? If we want to make a change, we must follow 4 simple steps. First, we must enforce the laws that are already in the status quo. As aforementioned, the majority of states have previously implemented laws to eliminate the harms of distracted driving, and that's great. However, it's clear to see that these laws aren't being enforced whatsoever. Laws are only as good as their enforcement, which is currently at an all-time low. I can't tell you how many times I've seen people texting, calling, or taking pictures while behind the wheel. National Academies explains that as of 2021, Ohio, Michigan, and Utah all wanted to increase the strictness of their distracted driving laws. The one and only way to increase the effectiveness of these laws is by passing legislation. We need to take action and create initiatives that contact policymakers to have this legislation be created. The second step to solving this problem is creating safer designs and technologies. Not only do we need to focus on the automakers of cars and scientists of technologies, but it is vital that we focus on the bigger picture. Encouraging cities to place rumble strips on roads can alert drivers when they begin to shift out of their lanes. Car companies can implement less distracting driver assistance systems in newest car models. Technology producers can create apps that block phone use while drivers are on the road. These programs are already starting to develop, such as Life360's crash detection centers and Apple's Do Not Disturb feature, but they aren't effective unless drivers intentionally activate them. To make it crystal clear, the majority of this problem is the fact that we ourselves are lacking discipline. In order for this problem to be completely solved, phone companies should utilize their current movement tracking systems. This technology is already in existence, meaning that phones are currently able to detect when they're inside of moving cars. However, focus provided by this solution would allow phone companies to automatically silence messages and calls. Whether this process be through general phone settings or a pre installed app, it would be an effective deterrent to distracted driving, as vehicle operators would be significantly less likely to check their notifications when their phone isn't going off. By having companies work together, we can ensure that safety on the road becomes the number one top priority in every aspect. Third, we must educate children in schools about the dangers of distracted driving. Once again, it's clear to see that this isn't being done. We can put posters in school telling kids to buckle up, or put signs in parking lots that encourage kids to put their phones down, but is this really an effective deterrent? No, it's not. Until kids, especially young drivers, are able to understand the extent of this issue, it's likely that they will continue to drive while distracted. The best way to implement this education would be through driver's education programs. And finally, we can solve this issue by eliminating distractions on an individual level. It is key that we all remember the importance of safe driving. If we don't attempt to multitask and put our phones away while driving, the roads will become a significantly safer place. If we were all to follow this step alone, we could reduce the fatality rate from distracted driving crashes to 0. Okay, kids, we're almost there. By following this solution, we're able to access many unique benefits. As I mentioned above, the roads will become a much safer place. Current laws have managed to reduce distracted driving incidents by roughly 4%. Given the overall ineffectiveness of these laws, implementing my more complex solution will have significantly more substantial impacts to thwart the harms presented by unattended drivers. Stricter enforcement of these laws will lead to an even greater reduction in accidents. And additionally, we can see that there will be a longer life expectancy. The four-step solution to this issue ensures that drivers will be safer on the roads, pay more attention to their surroundings, and be less likely to engage in reckless driving behavior. Reducing the amount of unnecessary crashes would cause more people to live longer lives and in turn increase the life expectancy. Now that we've made it, let's put the car in park. Today we learned all about distracted driving. We discussed its current harms, how the preventative measures in place simply aren't enough, a solution to this issue, and finally, how we will benefit once we implement this solution. It is for these reasons and many more that distracted driving is one of the most harmful issues in our society today. Thankfully, with a little effort, this problem can be solved. I hope the next time you find yourself reaching for your phone behind the wheel, you're able to consider not only your own safety, but the safety of those around you. As my parents like to say, drive safe, Pookies. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.